On the 17th of May 1959, Kelso Cochrane was walking down Goulburn Road, which is in West London near Ladbroke Grove. He was walking back from the hospital after injuring his thumb at work earlier that day, and he was attacked. He was attacked in a brutal, racist attack, beaten and left to die outside a pub along that road. Now, the only thing that marks this event from happening is a blue plaque above the pub where this happened, or outside where it happened. Kelso is one of the many victims of racial attacks that have happened in London. He was a human being. He was a person who'd moved to London, having been sort of brought up and told that England was his sort of mother country, and he came here as a British citizen and was met with hostility and violence and left on the streets to die. His story is unbelievably sad and a tragic one. However, there are glimpses of hope within this story too. But first off, we need to look at the sort of context of what was happening in Britain and what was happening in the sort of Ladbroke Grove and Notting Hill area of the late 1950s. Just a year before, you'd had racial tensions had come to a head with the Notting Hill riots. Groups of teddy boys had been going around and beating up people from the Caribbean community. They've been going and targeting them. They've been using bike chains, knuckle dusters to terrorise the people. And eventually, the residents of Notting Hill, I thought they just had enough and they fought back. And this led to what is now known as the Notting Hill riots. So it's not a peaceful time. But it's a year after this that Kelso was murdered. And it is incredibly sad and upsetting. Also, you have Oswald Mosley in the area. So he is the person who is responsible for organising marches through Jewish areas in the 1930s and terrorising Jewish migrants. Well, this time he's moved his efforts from the East End, and he's moved to West London, and he's located his new movement, which is called the Union Movement, here in Notting Hill, and he's stirring up racial tensions. He's stirring up trouble. He's preaching his racial hatred, and we know that this attack was racist because one of the people involved in the attack had been a member of Mosley's Union Movement. However, like many inquiries and police inquiries to come, this one was completely botched. The police refused to acknowledge that there could have been a racial motivation for it. Hardly any people were questioned, and it was just not followed up or taken seriously. Unfortunately, this is a tale that has repeated itself through the rest of the century, most notably with the Stephen Lawrence case. So it's in this area that he's murdered, and the street he was murdered on is now being increasingly gentrified. But his murder sort of marks a big fight back. His funeral procession went up Ladbroke Grove, and he's buried in Kensal Green Cemetery. Thousands of people attended. You can see by these pictures that so many people turned up and lined the street of the funeral procession going up, and it became a sort of rallying cry for people to sort of organise around, and people thought no more. One of the key organisers of the funeral was Claudia Jones, who would later go on to organise Notting Hill Carnival, which is one of the positives. There aren't many, but one of the positives that have come out of this. This is the story of Kelso Cochrane. I hope you enjoy this video. These are the stories that we need to learn about, which are important to learn about and significant, but we forget about our own civil rights struggles that have happened in Britain. Boris Johnson is asking people to want an accurate account account of history, but statues don't do that. We need to confront horrible past. We need to evaluate British history in more depth and look at the crimes of empire. We need to look at racism in Britain, and we need to remember victims who were murdered in cold blood on the streets of London, such as Kelso. Anyway, thank you. Have a good day.